This is section 9.1. This is on square roots and cube roots. So we're going to start off with the formal definition of what it means to be a square root. It says if x squared equals y, then x is the square root of y. Now let me put some numbers to that so it makes a little bit more sense. So for instance, 3 squared is 9. That means that 3 is the square root of 9. But also, negative 3, if you square that quantity, you get 9. That means then by this definition that negative 3 is also the square root of 9. So which one is the square root of 9? Well, both. Every positive real number has two square roots, one positive, one negative. So that means the square root of 49 is both 7 and negative 7, because 7 squared is 49 and negative 7 quantity squared is 49. Now you may be thinking, I thought it was just the positive one. Well, that's where this symbol comes in. That's probably because you're used to seeing this symbol right here. This symbol, this radical is what it's called. It represents the positive or the principal square root of a number. So if you see this is asking you for the positive square root of 49, which is just 7. So we wouldn't write this symbol and then put 7 and negative 7. This symbol inherently means that you want just the positive square root. Now the square root of a negative number, if the number under this radical happens to be negative, then that's going to be an imaginary number. Don't worry, we're going to cover those later on in chapter 9. So we'll get to there. Okay, you should pause the video, go grab your calculator, because we're going to be doing some of these on the calculator. Go ahead, pause the video. Don't just watch. Come on, participate. It'll make the time go by faster. So the square root of 64 is 8. That is because 8 squared is 64. Square root of 25 is 5 because 5 squared is 25. Square root of 100 is 10 because 10 squared is 100. The square root and squared are what we call inverse operations. Okay, just like multiplication, division, and addition, subtraction. They're inverses. A lot of students will mistakenly, right here, the square root of 100, they'll say 50. Because they're thinking what plus itself gives you 100 instead of what times itself. So just in case you immediately saw that and you thought 50 and you were like, ooh, man, I was way off. Common mistake. Now, with all of these, we can use the calculator for this. So you can do like the square root of 100. The square root symbol is right here. It's kind of above the x squared button in green. That's because they're inverse functions, so it's pretty common on calculators to have the function and its inverse on the same keystroke. So we get 10. Now you'll notice here I got that negative under that square root right there. So if I do the square root of negative 16, you'll see I get a domain error. That's different than a syntax error, right? So if you were to try to do the square root, and instead of using the negative sign, let's say you accidentally use the subtraction sign. If you get what's called a syntax error, that means the calculator doesn't know what you want. Okay? It doesn't understand your command. So if you hit clear, it's going to blinky blinky on the problem. That's saying, hey, you use subtraction. I don't know why you use subtraction here. So then you can change it to a negative. Now it's like, oh, I know what you want. Yeah, I still can't do it. So that's the domain error. So I just wanted to point out the difference in those error messages. Now this one, the negative is on the outside of the radical symbol. It's not under it. That makes a difference because that square root of 16, that's just 4. This little negative, I accented it in red just to show you how it's just along for the ride. You know, it's like that one friend that we all have that's, you know, the mooch and just, you know, is there for the free beer or something. Yeah, that's this negative. It's just mooching, just along for the ride. Now this one, you can put this in your calculator, or you can simplify the square root of 49 and get 7, and then do 9 minus 7, which is 2. Or you can put it in your calculator. So we could do 9 minus, 9 minus, let's try to do it right this time, the square root of 49, and get 2. So if there's a negative number under that square root, you're going to get a non-real answer. Okay? If the negative's on the outside, that's cool. No problems there. All right, so let's do some that are a little messier. So again, have your calculator handy, pause the video, see if you can get these same answers that I got. So I figured that this one, part B, might be the messiest one. I mean, the square root of 400 is 20 because 20 squared is 400. This one's a little messy, but on this calculator, we can handle it. We're going to do the square root, then hit the N over D, that fraction button. That's going to bring up that fraction for you. And then we can put 9 on the top, 289 on the bottom, and boom, 3 over 17. Because the square root of 9 is 3, square root of 289 is 17. Right? Cool. All right, this one, is this going to be a non-real answer? Nope, we're good. That's just the mooch. That's just that negative that's just along for the ride. Just here for the free beer. Okay, the next ones are approximations. So we're definitely going to need the calculators for these. If you want to do the other ones in your head, these, probably can't do these in your head so well. With these, the main thing I want to focus on is the rounding issues. Because in Hawks, it may say like, hey, approximate or round to 4 decimal places. So if we do the square root of 80 on this calculator, it's going to give you that exact answer first, but you can always hit this toggle key, this white one with the 2 arrows, and that will toggle between the exact and the approximate answer. So we get this decimal. Now notice right here, I've got a 3 on the end. See how this one has like 2.7. What happened to the 2.7? Well, it was 2.7, but that 7 rounded that 2 up to a 3. So I just wanted to refresh your memory on those rounding rules, just so you didn't accidentally, round incorrectly and have Hawks mark it wrong, and next thing you know, you're chucking your laptop across the room because you're so fed up with Hawks. We don't want that. We don't need that kind of violence in our life. So this is just negative square root of 145. That's not a subtraction sign. Just put that in your calculator, round accordingly. This one, this 4 minus 2 root 3. Now if you put it in with this calculator, it's going to know that that smushing of 2 and that square root of 3 is multiplication. Okay? It's going to kick out that exact answer for you. For the approximation, we're going to hit that, what's called the toggle key. And there's our decimal. Now if you might see my equal sign that looks kind of wavy, that's just an abbreviation for approximately equal to. Alright, and then down here, so I did skip this one. I'm hoping you guys can just bust out your calculators. Make sure, this is just an exercise in knowing how to use your calculator and making sure you can round correctly. That's really all this is. This one you're going to get a domain error because that negative is under that square root, so it's a non-real number answer. Okay. So, if the square root of something is looking for what squared is that number, then the cubed root with a little 3 right there means what cubed is going to give you that stuff under the radical. Now remember, cubed is multiplication by the same thing 3 times. So for instance, the cube root of 8 is asking you, hey, what number cubed is going to give you 8? That's not the same thing as dividing by 3. I'm not asking you to divide 8 by 3. I'm asking you to multiply the same number 3 times and get 8. Just like the square root didn't split it in half. This one doesn't like split it into thirds. So the cube root of 8 is 2 because 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. Right? 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. But wait! Act now and you get another cube root. The cube root of negative 8. We can take the cube root of negative numbers. This one's actually giving negative 2 because negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. And then positive 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. So we can take the cube root of a negative number. We cannot take the square root of a negative number. And what we're going to see later on in Chapter 9 is that we can make an even broader generalization and say, hey, we can take the odd root of a negative number, but we can't take an even root. So just in case you need a little teaser about where we're headed with all this. Okay, So let's talk about some cube roots and how to use the calculator to find them. On your calculator here, above this little up arrow looking thing, that's some terrible focus going on here. Right above that little up arrow, you'll see a little X with a radical next to it. That is your whatever root, fourth root, fifth root, cube root, all those. So for this, you'll have to put the 3 in first. Then we're going to hit second and that little up arrow. And it's going to bring up that radical sign. And you see how it moved that 3 up there into that little position up here. It's called an index is what that little number is called that sits on that radical. So that's one thing I like about this calculator is it displays stuff just like it looks, in kind of math text here. All right, so the cube root of 64 is 4. That's because 4 times 4 times 4 is 64. Similarly, the cube root of negative 64 is negative 4. You can put this one in your calculator as well. The cube root of 1 is 1. So I just want you to put all these in your calculator and see how it goes. This last one with the fraction, I could see that one being a little bit of a mess. So we're going to hit 3 to tell it it's a cube root. Later on we're going to do fourth and fifth roots and so on. But then we're going to hit the fraction button and do 27 and then 1,000. And we get 3 over 10. So you want to be careful with how you write this. The cube root needs to be a little number right there kind of sitting on that radical. If you write that 3 too big, it looks like it's 3 times the square root instead of the cube root. So be careful in how you write these because you don't want to misinterpret what you wrote. You don't want it to write something totally different. Okay, so let's do some approximations of some cube roots and that will finish up this section for us. So the cube root of 9, it's not 3. Don't divide 9 by 3 and get 3 here. So we're going to do 3 and then that x root of 9 and we get that decimal. And again, I'm rounding it to 4 decimal places. This one, that multiplication, I'm pretty sure that the calculator does not know. So I'm going to put in 8 times 3, then do the x root of 2. If you don't put that times symbol and you did 8 and then you did 3, look what it does. It does the 83rd root of 2. Yeah, you don't want that. That's something totally different. So here you do have to put in that multiplication symbol to tell the calculator that you want to multiply those together. Then we got 3 minus the cube root of 5. And then here we've got the cube root of negative 30. Make sure you use the negative symbol right there. I'm going to use this over arrow that's on the circles here to get out from under that radical. And then hit plus 3, x root again, 12. So you want to make sure that you know how to use the calculator before you go in to Hawks and start doing the homework and the quizzes and stuff. Don't just assume that you know how to use the calculator. You don't want to miss a problem just because you don't know how to operate the calculator, okay? That is going to finish us up for 9.1. Of course, if you have any problems with your calculators, you can always just let me know via email and I can certainly help you.